Hello everyone, and welcome back to my new series, Know Their Enemy, where in each episode we analyse a different D&D creature and go over their lore, combat tactics, and behaviours to help dungeon masters like you run them in your game. In this episode, we cover the brutal tribal warriors, Orcs. Orcs, the classic savage warriors who inhabit nearly every fantasy realm. Feared for their brutality and cunning tactics, in the hands of a skilled dungeon master, these formidable foes can become the ultimate test for any adventuring party. While they differed greatly, Orcs shared certain physical qualities. Orcs of all kinds usually have stooped builds, greyish skin and coarse black hair, with low foreheads, reddish eyes, and faces of porcine appearance that featured large lower canines similar to a boar's tusks. They also had wolf-like ears that were pointed on the ends. Orcs were roughly the same size as humans and similar humanoids, though usually larger build. As you can see, Orcs have changed vastly in appearance over the years since first edition in 1974 up until today. Traditional Orcish culture was extremely warlike, and when not at war, they were usually planning for it. Most Orcs approached life with the belief that to survive, one had to subjugate potential enemies and control as many resources as possible, which put them naturally at odds with other races as well as each other. This belief was spurred partly by Grumsh and his pantheon, which taught that all races were inferior to the Orcs. Most Orcs were part of a confederation of tribes, loosely held together by a despotic chieftain. Bands within these alliances might wander far from their homelands, but continued to greet these Orcs who belonged to the same tribal network as kin. The Eyes of Grumsh were Orcs especially tied to the one-eyed god and offered sacrifices, read omens, and advised tribes on Grumsh's will. Orc blood rages were champions of their tribe, who used primal strength and ferocity to overcome their enemies. Most were bodyguards or lower ranking chiefs within the tribal structure. Male Orcs dominated most Orcish societies, and females were usually, at best, prized possessions, and little than livestock at worst. Male Orcs prided themselves on their number of wives and sons and their scars from battle and rituals. Orcs also prized the possessions of slaves, though relatively few owned them. Most Orcs didn't build cities of their own, instead relying on those left behind by others and improving their fortifications or operating out of small camps and dens, often in natural caves. Orcs managed ironwork on their own, as well as stonework, though their tools were often inferior to those of more disciplined races. Orcs can be formidable foes on their own in combat, so let's have a look at what we're working with here. Found on pages 244 to 247 of the Monster Manual, Orcs are described as burly raiders with prominent lower canines that resemble tusks. They gather in tribes that satisfy their bloodlust by slaying any humanoids that stand against them. Orcs have high strength and constitution scores, meaning that they are more geared towards being a tank that gets into the players' faces, taking them head on. In combat, Orcs will try and be as close to the enemy as possible. If the Orc is out of range of their enemy after using all of their movement, they can use their aggressive feature to close the distance. Aggressive. As a bonus action, the Orc can move up to its speed towards a hostile creature that it can see. If the Orc still can't get up close and personal, they'll use javelins to try and chip away at their quarry until their next turn. Or if you're feeling extra spicy, use their action to dash and their bonus action to use their aggressive feature. This means that Orcs can move 90 feet in one turn. Once in range, that's when the Great Axe comes into play. Don't be afraid to switch their javelins for short or long bows if that fits better with your campaign. Orcs have a low intelligence score of 7. Taking this into account, charging into battle is their bread and butter, and they'll often disregard their safety to go in for the kill. This could make for a close standoff between Orcs and your party's tank, with Orcs typically going for the biggest target they can get to. That being said, if there are casters in your group, don't be afraid of putting them under pressure by making some Orcs flank and get into their casters' faces. So now we know how the standard Orc may fight in combat, let's switch things up, shall we? Let's start off by adding a slight upgrade to the standard Orc. On page 247 of the Monster Manual, we have the Orog. Orogs share similar stats to the standard Orcs, but they've been given plate armour with an AC of 19, 42 HP and a multi-attack. These guys are no joke and can easily wipe players if they roll well. Be careful replacing all Orcs with these guys, as it may be a TPK waiting to happen. As we've covered, the standard Orc shines up close and personal, so let's switch things up by adding a ranged caster to the mix. There is a homebrew Orc Shaman online which boasts some of the decent spellcasting capabilities of other actual spellcasters that players can play as. Looking at the spell list, this foe can both heal and deal some decent damage. A cool tactic that could be used is to have this shaman remain hidden until some of the Orcs start to take damage, and then have them cast mass cure wounds to bring them back up. I'll link this in the description if you want to see the stat block for this guy, he's pretty cool. Adding one or two of these to a bigger fight could make for a hard encounter, or adding one to a smaller fight as a mini-boss of sorts will keep the party on the edge of their seats. Another way to vary your encounters with Orcs is to add less Orcs. Yes, you hear that right, it can be a common occurrence that Orcs will often ally with other races when they see a mutual benefit. This could be goblins, ogres, hill giants, bugbears or hobgoblins. And there you have it, my friends, a quick dip into what makes Orcs tick in D&D. If you found any of this information useful, then I'd appreciate it if you liked the video and gave me a subscribe. It helps the channel grow as I've just started out. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I'll see you in the next one, adventurers, and stay safe out there. Thank you.